Hello everyone, welcome back to a brand new video today on the channel, and today we are going to be reviewing the brand new film Wonka, which was directed by Paul King. And in this film we follow a young Willy Wonka as he seeks out fame and purpose as he starts to create his legendary chocolate empire. But along the way he hits some speed bumps in the form of the chocolate cartel that plan to destroy everything that he has created. That's all I'm going to say without spoiling anything, but Wonka. This is a movie that was pretty interesting in my regards of my excitement for it. And the main reason for that is because I'm not a huge fan of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I know some people consider it this classic and this amazing childhood film, but I wasn't raised with it. Like, I'd seen it a couple times, don't get me wrong. I watched it at school, that original film. I watched it quite a bit. And I even watched the Tim Burton film, which I do remember kind of scared me a little bit as a kid. Like, I really don't like the one scene where they throw the little girl down the incinerator and all the squirrels are, like, carrying her away. That's the one scene that really sticks with me for some reason.
Where are they taking her? Where all the other bad nuts go, to the garbage chute. Where does the chute go? To the incinerator. What the fuck?
And honestly, I never really got sucked into this world, so I didn't really have a whole lot of nostalgia when it came to this property. So when it got announced, I wasn't really excited. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Hopefully it's good. But what really got me excited about this movie was that this film was being directed by Paul King. If you don't know who Paul King is, this is the same guy who directed some legendary movies like Paddington and Paddington 2, which I consider some of the best children/family movies ever made, and honestly some of my favorite movies. They're really, really good. So that instantly kind of gave me a little bit of hope that this movie could be good and have some of that same charm that he brought to those movies. And I'm actually really glad to say that this movie was actually quite a bit of fun, and yes, did have a lot of that energy. In my opinion, this movie was a crisp 2 hours of pure imagination and just good times. Paul King just has a very distinct style to his directing, where all of his films, including Paddington 1 and 2, have a very similar feel to them. It's very welcoming, very warm and wholesome, and this movie very much shares that. And it kind of makes this film, honestly, kind of unhateable in terms of its tone. It's a very kid-friendly film, but that's not a bad thing at all. And it's definitely not a dumb film. It knows what it is. It's trying to make families happy, and honestly, that's what this film is. And I thought it did a really good job, but Paul King has just once again proved that he's a really good director. He knows how to make really good family movies that are more than just lame jokes and kiddish humor. He's honestly just one of those rare directors where everything he makes is sort of just unhateable. Like, I can't really see anyone like really ripping this movie to shreds, you know? I really think this movie was just a really good family flick that I had a lot of fun with. Now, the first big thing I did want to talk about was Timothée Chalamet as Willy Wonka himself, and I just want to start this off by saying I am a fan of this actor. I think he is a very, very talented actor. But even I, when he got announced to be Willy Wonka, was a little bit skeptical, because he didn't really fit the role, in my opinion. From first glance, I was like, I can kind of see that, but let's just see how it goes. And I'm kind of sad I even doubted him. He's still really good in this movie. He's definitely not, like, incredible or anything, but he's very serviceable. He's very charming. He's very whimsical. And I think he definitely had that performance to him, where you could definitely tell that he was this crazy, zany chocolate maker. It's very believable in that sense. But even saying that, I still want to say his performance isn't incredible, because I think there are a couple moments where he goes a little bit overboard with his performance. Like, I understand that Willy Wonka is a pretty crazy guy, you know? He's this crazy, reserved guy who just likes to make chocolate. Like, I get it, you know? And he has a very specific feel to him. And I think that Timothée did a great job for what he was given, but I think there are a couple moments where he goes a little over the top. Like, it's just a little out of character. It felt a little weird in the movie. I'm not gonna sit here and say he was terrible, because that just wasn't the case, but there were a couple moments in the movie where I felt he went a little overboard. And another thing I really want to point out, did anyone know that this movie was a musical? Like, was it ever really said in the trailers that it was going to be that much of a musical? Because, like, I got some of that in the trailers, because I went back and rewatched them, and yeah, there are some times, I guess, maybe where it could be implied that this is a musical, but I didn't realize how much of a musical this movie was going to be. And keeping on that fact, I thought it was a damn good musical. I really like a lot of the songs in this movie. They're all pretty good. They were very catchy and very wholesome, and they fit the movie very well. I can't see myself like watching them outside of the movie, but for what they were in the movie, I still very much enjoyed them. They were very well choreographed. They had a lot of really good beats to it, very fluid, and had just a really good energy to it. And a lot of that had to really do with the cinematography, which was great in this movie. movie. Very, very fast and fluid movements, and a very warm color palette. There's a lot of different bright colors in this movie that I could really appreciate, and it really brought out those musical numbers and just a lot of other moments in the film. It was just a lot of eye candy to watch, and I didn't mean to do that on purpose, but it's true. And I also want to say this movie was extremely funny, like surprisingly really funny, because it's funny because I remember when the trailer was coming out and everyone was kind of like, this movie looks like the most unfunny thing I've ever seen. Everything looks weird, all the comedy just looks whatever. And honestly, I was one of those people saying, just give it a chance. It could be kind of fun. And honestly, I thought this movie was insanely funny. Like, there's one joke with Keegan-Michael Key's character, which I loved him in this movie. He was very funny, very great actor. But there's a point in this movie where it's a recurring joke where he's a bit of a sweet tooth. So every time in the movie, whenever he shows up, he's slightly getting bigger and bigger from eating so much chocolate. And it became so ridiculous after a certain point that it was nothing but funny. It was freaking hilarious. I was dying personally because I thought it was just one of those things that never really goes mentioned. Like, none of the characters surrounding him really mention it, but you can see it in their faces how they react to it, and it made it like 10 times more funny. And that goes with just a lot of the humor in this movie. There are very few times where I didn't think something was funny. It was just really, really fun. And really quick, before I go into my cons, I really just want to say, Hugh Grant as the Oompa Loompa. Listen, I don't think that he was a bad part about the movie at all. I don't. But what was going on with the CGI? Because I don't even think that it was necessarily bad, but there was something really weird about it that was throwing me off throughout the entire movie. And it's really weird because I actually really liked Hugh Grant in this movie. He was very funny. He had a couple good musical numbers. Like, he was a really good part about this movie, but I am going to talk about that a little bit later in my cons. But the CGI was just slightly off. I can't even say it was a bad thing, though. It was just noticeable. And I think that just has to do with the fact that he was completely CGI'd and it didn't really look practical at all, which I know is just going to happen sometimes. But I just wanted to mention it because, it doesn't look awful. It just looks a little cursed. It looks like he's going to haunt my dreams for a little bit, but that's okay. But really quickly, moving into my cons about this movie, I really want to emphasize is that I don't think there's that much in this movie that makes it terrible. Like, I don't think there's anything that's like a huge red flag, that's like a really big complaint. I have a lot of nitpicks, and there are a lot of little things, but it really has to come down to how the movie, I feel, was kind of paced out, because this movie was set out to be kind of like the Willy Wonka origin story, where it kind of explained a lot of things about the character, and I felt like there was a lot kind of missing, and there was a lot that was brought into the movie that I don't think was necessarily needed, and that's where I was going to get directly into Hugh Grant as the Oompa Loompa. Like I said, not a bad character, but I don't think he was really needed in this movie. He has a little bit of a backstory, that character, and there's a reason why he shows up in the movie, but it seems a little just like one of those things where it just didn't need to be in the film. It felt like it was there just because they said, well, it's a Willy Wonka movie, so we kind of just need an Oompa Loompa, right? Like, that's just iconic. We need that there, so just put it into the movie. But it didn't really need to be in the movie, There are other things that I was hoping they would focus on more than that, and throughout the film, he just kind of showed up, like, every once in a while. I was like, oh, okay, there he is. And it was funny, don't get me wrong, but I would have much rather them focus on what they were trying to set up, and that is the relationship between Wonka and his mother, because that is definitely the emotional focus of the movie. His relationship with his mother is kind of why he becomes the man he is today, but the thing is, they never really show us into his relationship with his mom that much. Like, there's a couple scenes, like a couple flashbacks here and there, but they're very surface level. They're very sweet, don't get me wrong, but they're just nothing beyond, like, the proper surface level thing where you're just like, oh, I feel sad because, he loved his mom, and, you can tell that. And definitely after watching the movie, I definitely wish that they could have maybe just cut some of the stuff out with Hugh Grant's character and put more stuff with his mom and explore his backstory more. Because we never really learn in this movie why Wonka is such a crazy, zany guy. Like, his mom wasn't even that crazy. She's pretty much a regular mom. It's really interesting that I would have wished they would have went into more, because he is kind of a weirdo, and that's okay. But I would have liked to see why he's a weirdo. And if there isn't a reason, show us a little bit more how he was in his youth, Like, explain some of that. Show it in flashbacks with his mom. Because then that would have also made the movie a lot more emotional. And there was a lot of emotional beats closer to the end of the movie that they really wanted to hit. But I don't feel they hit that part just because they didn't show us enough of their relationship. But honestly, that's the only real things I'd really complain about this movie. I still think this movie was a great time. Paul King just continues to prove that he's a director to be reckoned with. And I honestly honestly think I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. Very, very solid family movie that I do recommend watching. This movie's just a really good, wholesome, fun movie that I think a lot of families are really going to appreciate this time of year going to the December season, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's slightly interested in watching it. But anyways, with that, if you like this video, please like and subscribe down below for more content on the channel coming pretty damn soon, and I'm going to see y'all in the next one. See ya.